Welcome to the Prevention Leaders Podcast, where we delve deep into the stories that shape our world. Today, we're venturing into the heart of military households, a realm often overshadowed by the valor of the battlefield. Our guest, Sarah, brings to light the unsung heroes at home, those who stand resiliently behind our servicemen and women, offering unwavering support and love. In this episode, we'll uncover the challenges, triumphs, and unique dynamics of military family life. Sarah's passion for uniting and uplifting these families is wonderful, and her insights offer a fresh perspective on the bonds that tie our defenders' kin. So, whether you're part of a military family or simply curious about the world behind the uniform, today's conversation promises to be both enlightening and heartwarming. So let's dive in. In prevention, we are all leaders. Whether you're leading a nationwide prevention initiative, facilitating statewide prevention community, you're a coalition coordinator, or a one-person shop, you are a prevention leader. How we show up and how we engage with others to create positive change takes all types of leadership. So sit back and enjoy these conversations with your fellow prevention leaders from across the globe who are sharing their lessons learned, best practices, and strategies for success. All right, podcast listeners, welcome back for another episode of the Prevention Leaders Podcast. Today, I am joined by a true prevention leader and somebody that is creating positive change locally, across their region, in their state, and nationally. And we're going to get into some awesome experiences, impacts, stories, sprinkled in with some very powerful personal stories as well. So without further ado, welcome to the podcast, Sarah.
Hi, Dave. Thank you so much for having me on today.
We've been friends now for quite a while, so I know a bit about your background and your current role, but for our listeners, would you mind introducing yourself and sharing a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so I am the Military Family Resiliency Specialist, and I work for 7 County Services, which is the community mental health agency that serves Louisville, Kentucky, and surrounding 6 rural counties. My role, however, stretches throughout the state of Kentucky, and I provide consultation and technical assistance to prevention professionals and communities throughout the state who are working with or trying to engage with our military connected population, so service members, veterans, and their family members, to implement evidence-based strategies and best practices within their prevention work. So my personal background, I grew up in a military family in Virginia Beach, Virginia, which is outside of the largest naval base in the world, and was privileged to many benefits that the military offered. So I proudly also wear the hat of a Navy brat because my father did 20 years in the Navy. I also had brothers who were in the military, cousins, aunts, uncles, so come from a long history of military service, which encourages me to serve and give back to my community. So
Marvelous. And first, I got to say, go Army. But I know that you've got a lot of passion behind your role and why you do what you do. And a lot of my guests, me included, our journey, our path to working in prevention is all different and all unique. I'd love it if you're okay sharing a little bit about your journey and what has led you to working as a military family resiliency specialist.
So, as mentioned, I grew up in a military family. So, with those, strengths that the military family offers, it can also be very challenging to be a part of a military family. My father experienced deployments. We were actually stationed overseas and lived in England. So, there's a lot of transition. I had to readapt to American culture, and I came back with an accent, and people didn't understand how I was spoke. And so also in as an adult, both of my brothers served in the military. My older brother first served in the army. He was stationed overseas. And so we always had a very unique relationship. He was in Germany and we'd call and talk on Sundays or we'd write letters. And then both of my brothers were also in the Virginia National Guard. My younger brother was deployed to Iraq in 2006. And so with that, I experienced a lot of anxiety, a lot of worry, a lot of unknown things that could possibly happen because he was deployed to a combat zone. Um, and so it really impacted, our relationship and also wanting to get closer and wanting to be a part of his life. But because of his experiences, him not wanting to share that information or holding on to or unable to share that information. And so when my older brother, he also deployed to Iraq the following year in 2007. And that experience was a little different because he was married with children at the time. And so he had a life outside of a sibling. And however, I lived with his family when he was deployed because of wanting that family support. And so when he returned home, I saw, the way that he expressed his anger in unhealthy ways or expressed his emotions and experiences that really impacted, his wife, his children, and myself, my children. And so I had that firsthand lived experience of seeing how military life and military experiences can impact a family unit. In 2014, several years after my older brother returned home, he died by suicide. He was going through an extremely difficult time. Our family was completely unprepared for that call that happened, that we received. We didn't see anything coming. We didn't know anything coming. Nobody even spoke the suicide word. Nobody understood how to help him, how to support him, even after reaching out to the VA for care, even after reaching out to Wounded Warriors for care. We were helpless and didn't have any information. And ultimately, it shook us to our core. We were left with empty hearts and with grief and not knowing how to deal with it. And we were in a community that didn't know how to support us. I had to support my mom and my children who were also, experienced this loss. And so myself was left with no one to care for me because my community didn't understand mental health. They didn't understand um, military life. And so there was no opportunity for me to reach out to anyone to get that support. And so a year and a half after his death, I moved to Kentucky. I moved my family from Florida to Kentucky looking for better opportunities, new life, change, positive change, and took a new role as the office manager in our regional prevention center. And my director, because I had no experience in prevention, I was coming in as an admin role. She said to shadow our other prevention staff and see what prevention is like and see what we're doing in our communities and how we're helping. And so I began shadowing. I started attending various different trainings. I'll never forget when I attended my first question, persuade, refer, QPR, suicide prevention gatekeeper training. I know the classroom I was sitting in and everything. When we were going over the warning signs and risk and protective factors for suicide, I checked off every single box and I said, I can't believe that this is something that everyone experiences. I can't believe that that this information was not available for us. That this training, it's so powerful to have that information and to know that an individual has the ability to offer that hope, offer that support, and save a life. And after attending that QPR class, I knew that I needed to work in prevention. I knew that every single person on this planet needed to know about suicide prevention. They needed to know about the warning signs and the risk factors, and needing to know that there are things that we can do before a crisis even occurs, that upstream prevention, that we can make the impact in the environment so where individuals don't ever have to experience the loss, not just, my brother's death, but how it impacted me. No one else should have to become a suicide loss survivor. That's a club that no one wants to be a part of. And so because of that, I knew that I I had to be a prevention specialist and work within our communities to empower individuals to live healthy lives.
Thank you for sharing. And I I know that that's never fun to tell that story. For me, podcast listeners, I'm over here. It's a good thing I'm standing because I can shake my knees and fidget. But that was an emotional roller coaster for me in that my eyes began to get a little watery because I was in Iraq in 2005. And while we were deployed, we had a soldier in our headquarters company that died by suicide while we were in country. And thinking back, so I came back in May of 2006. So that, and I know I've shared my story, struggling with post-traumatic stress and drinking, and how I was in this dark period for a long time, several years, and I feel it. I feel it. But then on the other end of the spectrum emotionally, I got chills when you were sharing about sitting in that QPR class and the power of what we do as prevention leaders, being able to change the lives of an individual that's sitting in our training or in our room with us, but then that ripple effect and how you really can change somebody's life by what we do. My mind is just spinning with different thoughts and questions. And yeah. Oh my goodness. Yes. And I'm glad you shared your story, especially from the family perspective. One of the one of the reasons I did not renew my contract, so I'd signed up for 6 years, got back in May of '06. My 6 years was up October of 2006. And one of the reasons I did not re-enlist is because I saw how hard it was on my family. And I mean, my mom wore 2 wristwatches the entire year that I was deployed, so she always knew what time it was in Iraq. I don't think she slept at all. And my dad being a retired sergeant major, he stepped right into leading the family support group. And just hearing the stories of what the families were dealing with and what my folks were doing to try to help them, power cut off, furnaces going down in the middle of the night, fires at the house, and just trying to provide that support. so the soldiers, we could focus on our missions, but that seeing that impact and feeling that impact. And now with my sister, who her family lives just down the road from me, outside of Virginia Beach, Virginia, as you know, Navy family as well. I love them. I love them. But yeah, seeing how that life is such a challenge on them and the kids, and it is oh so important. I'm just rambling, but oh so important. Yeah, I'll hit pause.
Think about impact on the family. And I thought this was my individual family's experience. And when I started working in prevention, I started looking into the data because everything that we do is based on
Mm-hmm.
data. And I love data. And so our Kentucky Incentives for Prevention, which is our statewide survey that is sent out every other year to 6th, 8th, 10th, and 12th graders, we started collecting data on military connectedness. We started asking a military identifying question on our survey. And we looked at substance use and mental health issues and compared military connected youth to non-military connected youth. And there was such a significant disparity within the two populations. And I was able to look at the numbers and relate it to my personal experiences of what the impact was on my family and be able to say, these are some of the reasons why military youth are at higher risk, even to the point where it helped me with my daughter, whose father was also 20 years Navy. However, he was in aviation and deployed all the time, was gone all the time. And I could see the impact that it had on her life with her anxiety and depression and that disconnect between parent and child. And so I was really able to look at those intervening variables as to why that data showed. And so with our work that we were starting in Kentucky, and this was, back in 2017, it really became apparent that this is a priority. This needs to be a priority because of what the data shows and because of what I knew personally. And Kentucky received a Strategic Prevention Framework Partnership for Success grant from SAMHSA in 2015. And the priority of the grant, or one of the priorities, was to reduce opioid use within all youth, but also military connected youth because they reported higher rates, but also to build capacity because we surveyed prevention professionals across the state of Kentucky at the beginning of the grant, and they had no idea how to engage the military community. They didn't know about the military community. We have two large Army installations, Fort Knox and Fort Campbell. However, if you weren't working within those communities, they didn't really even know that Kentucky has such a large military population. And Kentucky is ranked nationally as the 11th highest state with military connected youth. And so knowing all of this information and now we have funding, now we can start the work and now we can start building that capacity and working with those communities to help prevent substance use and increase resiliency and increase those protective factors for those military youth and families.
A little side note, I like that you said that what you were learning in prevention, you're able to see and apply with your daughter. I'm actually working on a piece right now where I'm connecting the dots and how working in prevention has been preparing me for parenthood. So right overlapping, but yeah, that that point being that prevention can prepare you, can help you, can empower you to be an even better parent. That could be a whole nother episode. All right. So in that little sidebar, but with the PFS funding and the data to drive those efforts, what have y'all done?
So when Kentucky received the grant, they dispersed the funds throughout the state to the 14 regional prevention centers. The two regional prevention centers, or RPCs, that were in the Fort Knox and Fort Campbell area received the largest amount of funding because of the active duty military presence in those regions. And so 7 counties, which is, you know, 30 miles north of the Fort Knox region, they received a smaller amount of money. The two regions near Fort Knox and Fort Campbell, they were able to connect in some ways with that active duty military. However, in Louisville, we started before I joined prevention. My director started a task force, a service member veteran family task force, which was comprised of um, organizations and individuals who are military connected. And it was just within that 7 county region, and started implementing strategies such as QPR trainings, military family appreciation events, distributing gun locks and medication lock boxes, and so on and so forth. One of the largest partners that we had at that task force was the suicide prevention coordinator from the VA hospital. We were invited to their annual summit, mental health summit, to disseminate information. And so we, of course, took our prevention, packed up our prevention resources and headed off and shook hands and handed out squeeze balls and rubber band bracelets. And of course, that's where our hopes is always to get more involved and become a more active partner. And so I say that to say that summit that I attended to hand out those squeeze balls turned into a lifelong partnership with the VA. I immediately told the VA, because it was a mental health summit, I said, how can I do more to support suicide prevention within the VA? I said, I'm a lost survivor. My brother is a veteran. He died by suicide. Whether I volunteer personally or whether I can connect professionally, I want to be a part of this. And they immediately welcomed me in. They allowed me to participate on their internal committees and summits. It gave me opportunities to speak at other summits about my personal experience and as a survivor, and how the VA can support survivors. And so then being a partner with the VA, it grew into, okay, now I'm a partner with other huge organizations, the Kentucky Department of Veteran Affairs, local veteran service organizations such as the VFW, Veterans of Foreign Wars. And so it just spread like, I don't want to say a wildfire, but it spread like a wildfire and picked up so much momentum because this was the priority. It was a federal priority for the VA. It was a priority for us at a local level, at a state level. And so all of the key people were in place, all of the resources. And so what began as a regional task force grew into now statewide position for myself and speaking on a national podcast. We had conversations with the Kentucky National Guard Teen Council back, it feels like years ago, pre-COVID, and then 18, that other lifetime that we live. And I went through a strategic planning with the youth, and I showed them our KIP data. And I said, you know, here's the data. This is what it says, that military youth are experiencing higher rates of serious psychological distress and suicide attempts, and reporting higher rates of past 30-day drug use. And I said, why do you think that military youth are reporting this? And they, freely spoke about their experiences as military youth. They specifically said schools and communities don't understand them. They don't understand their experiences as military youth. They said when they have a teacher that says, I'm military connected, I'm a veteran, I'm a spouse, I'm a child, there was an immediate connection between them and the teacher, and they felt like they could trust them. And so they shared how when they go to Kentucky National Guard youth camps and they see their peers and they get to, be around those people just like them, how comforting it was to them and how it helped build their confidence in who they are and their experiences. And so from those conversations with that teen council, we started 4 huge strategies that we hope to pilot at the local level back in 2020. However, world events happened. We were delayed. And so we really started our work back 2021 is, we were doing all of our behind the scenes work, but 2021, we launched our Purple Star Award program, our Yellow Ribbon Resiliency program. We modified some of our universal programs, such as the Dinner Table Project, and we started doing an annual creative youth art contest, and really just working hard to implement those 4 strategies. And now, because we've been doing it for 2 years, we're at the process where we're able to collect some evaluation data. And now we're in the process of, making some additional changes to ensure that we're doing the best work that we can do.
And I heard a lot of wisdom in all of that. And I want to just extract a couple bits that really stood out to me. And the first being at the beginning, when you went to the VA and you asked, how can I be more involved? How can I help? And my summary of that, my insight when it comes to prevention work and engaging stakeholders is to do just that. Ask how you can help. Ask if you can relieve burdens rather than knocking on the door and saying, hey, can you do this for me? You went in and asked how you could help them, and all the doors and opportunities that have grown out of that are phenomenal. You went out, you met them where they're at, and you asked how you could help them. It's such a important point when it comes to community engagement and doing prevention work. Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, see, these are the brain farts. I forgot what the second one was. And I kind of think too, the second little tidbit that I heard really just resonated with me from my own experience as a combat veteran that came back and went to college, and that feeling like I didn't belong, and how that impacted my mental health, my substance use, and my openness to trust others and engage with others and feel like I could be my authentic self. and that sense of belonging. And I see that with my niece and nephew, relocation, hard to establish friend groups and get involved. And I see it as, that sense of belonging as well. And that was kind of what I was hearing from you with the different programs for the youth in Kentucky, and really building that sense of you belong here. We we get you. We understand.
So one of the most successful or most proud programs that we're implementing is our Purple Star Award program. And the Purple Star Award program was actually created in Ohio back in 2017 as a result from with conversations with school leaders and youth and military and veterans families, and really just asking them, how can we support you and your students in our schools? And so what they determined was that they needed that school liaison. They needed someone in the school that was the go-to military expert. They could help an individual student. They're responsible for educating the school on military experiences and kind of breaking down, okay, this youth is experiencing, or you're seeing these signs in them because their parent or returning from deployment. And so that liaison really bridges the gap between students and teachers, families and students, families and schools. And so they're required to designate that school liaison. The liaison is required to be trained. Typically, we found that most of the liaisons are already military connected. They're all volunteer. We know that school staff have a lot of things that they have going on in schools right now. And to elect to take on one more role, it really speaks to their passion that they have for supporting military youth and students. These schools then host military recognition events, which offer the opportunity for schools to highlight those military connected students, to honor them for their service, because they do serve too. We've talked a lot about, those experiences that military youth have because they're part of a military family, and they didn't go to basic training. They didn't raise their hand. They didn't, swear to the commitment. However, they're serving. And so taking time out throughout the school year to recognize those youth is really impactful, not only to the military students, but the other students in the school as well, because now they're seeing, oh, this is what the military family is like. Oh, this is how the military supports us, and really gives them a perspective and creates that environment to where, okay, I'm not a military connected student, but I can understand. I can, relate to you in other ways and appreciate your experiences as well. And so those recognition events really just help to create that environment of support, inclusivity, not only within the walls of the school, but within the community, because the community is now seeing what the schools are doing to support the military. And so it is it is an actual award that a school receives once they've done these requirements, and they receive an award, and it is a state recognized award. Our program started developing in 2020, and we have our advisory board. The executive director of military affairs out of the governor's office is our chairperson. We have Our advisory board is made up of individuals from the Department of Education, for the Centers for School Safety. We have prevention professionals, Department of Veteran Affairs. We have other substance use prevention agencies that are part of it. So it's really an all-in effort to support these military students and families within Kentucky.
So we talked about the unique challenges and stressors military connected youth, families, and service members experience. How how do you work with the military connected families to develop resiliency and coping strategies for all of those different stressors that they do experience?
We have several different ways that we work with military families. Some is, it's a in-person during our National Guard youth camp events. We provide 2 hours of classroom type trainings using an evidence-based curriculum that offers lessons on coping skills and resistance to peer pressure and substance use. We also at pre and post deployment events. So when a unit is getting ready to deploy or returning from deployment, we offer educational presentations to soldiers and families, as well as other prevention resource materials such as the medication lock boxes and other dinner table project materials. We also engage families through the schools, talked about the Purple Star Award schools. Once a school is awarded the Purple Star, they are now in our Purple Star network. So now we are working hands-on with those schools at the local level through our RPCs to help with programming within the schools. Some schools may elect to have support groups for their students or have a peer-to-peer club. And so our prevention professionals will work with the schools to start or support those initiatives. We offer to the Too Good for Drugs and Sources of Strength. And so really our first goal is to help the school receive the Purple Star Award and help them understand the need to engage those families. And then once they've become in our network, then we start with the other prevention strategies working with the schools.
So step one, engage with the schools and help them get the Purple Star. And then step two is start implementing the evidence-based strategies. And you had shared some of those already, because I was going to ask, what are some of those, the curriculum, the content that you are sharing or training? But I want to back up even one step from helping schools get the Purple Star. Say you're speaking to community level prevention professional, prevention leader, and they're starting from scratch. They don't have any partnerships with military members, military serving organizations, nothing. But they've heard this podcast. They realize there is a need and I can do more. What are those first few steps that you would recommend they take?
I would first recommend that you talk to your current coalition members. 1 in 10 adults are veterans or service members. And that's just the veteran. So you may have a partner, a spouse, an adult child already on the coalition that is military connected. And, we are always looking for data and we're always looking at collecting demographics. And so add that military identifying demographic onto your coalition rosters. Because if you, as a preventionist, are not military connected, we know that it's going to be those that are military connected, those key stakeholders that are going to help push these initiatives forward, and giving them a space to share their experience and, you know, identify them and say, hey, I heard this podcast. I heard that we need to make this a priority population. And then you can start working with your coalition to develop strategies that are going to work best in your communities.
And what resources or websites would you recommend for the prevention leaders that are listening? And for example, like I like to share Make the Connection as a great starting point. And then the VA has a community provider toolkit. What other kind of resources are you familiar with that you would suggest our listeners check out?
There, unfortunately, is not a lot of resources that specifically speak to youth. There are a lot of resources that speak to supporting the veteran or the service member, such as, you mentioned Make the Connection.
Have you been on the Sesame Street? Don't they have
They do have a specific trainings and information for families through Sesame Street. There is Military Child Education Coalition. That is a national coalition, and they are the national advocates for the Purple Star Award. Military One Source has a lot of programs and information. I would definitely recommend reaching out and checking out our Purple Star website, kypurplestar.org. Has a lot of information on if you're interested in taking the liaison training, it's online. There's information that you can share with educators on how they can support students. There's information for families and other resources, and all of that is available on our website.
Marvelous. And listeners, the show notes will be filled with those links, so be sure to check them out. So I've got two last questions for you. They're both going to be very similar, but the first one would be what advice would you give to prevention leaders or coalition member as it relates to engaging the SMVF population?
My first piece of advice would don't be discouraged. Things are changing. And there used to be a point in time where the military was very closed and, we take care of our own type of mentality. And things are no longer that way. They're interested in engaging with community partners. They want to find out about resources and look for that key person who is going to open the door for you. It may not be upper leadership. It may be the person sitting next to you at the coalition meeting, because military leadership continuously changes. And so similar to when we have new legislation and we have to build those relationships up, every few years, it's the same thing with the military. Keep pushing forward, keep reaching out and trying to make those connections. And you will find that right golden door that gives you the opportunity to make those changes and improve the lives of those military families.
Excellent. I agree. And the last question would be, what advice would you give to military families who may be struggling and looking for support?
Don't wait to reach out. I know that the promise that I made to my brother when I said my goodbyes was that I was not going to allow anything in my life to hurt me to a point where I would consider dying. And I made sure that he knew I was always going to take care of myself and make sure that I was in a healthy place. It may not be the person that you think that is the one that can help you. Reach out for help, whether that the neighbor that may not understand or your faith-based, organization or leadership. uh, Don't wait. And so reach out for help in any way that you can.
And I will leave you listeners with that last bit of advice. Sarah, thank you for sharing your story, having the courage to be vulnerable, and also doing the work that you do. I have chills. I probably can't see it through the webcam, but I have chills with that last bit of wisdom of just reach out. I feel that. Thank you. I am honored to be a colleague and friend. That concludes this episode. Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and share this episode with a friend before you leave. And we look forward to seeing you on social media, because prevention is better together. Together, we are stronger.